There are serious concerns within the Department of Justice over the case brought against the Southern Poverty Law Center for their use of paid informants to infiltrate hate groups. That's according to a description of a whistleblower account obtained exclusively by my colleague Ken Dilanian. From his reporting, quote, a senior Trump administration Justice Department official ordered federal prosecutors in Alabama to, quote, rush through a controversial indictment of the Southern Poverty Law Center, despite concerns about the strength of the case. The Justice Department did not respond to requests for comment. Members of Congress who received that whistleblower complaint are now demanding answers from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Middle District of Alabama. They're requesting that they turn over records involving the case, as well as records of their own office's own use of the Southern Poverty Law Center's informants. Congressman Jamie Raskin writes this to the prosecutor accused of rushing the indictment. Quote, DOJ's exercising gaslighting by indictment requires America to bury its head in the sand and pretend the Southern Poverty Law Center's payments to infiltrate white nationalist groups were meant to support them, despite evidence to the contrary presented in this charging document. Joining our coverage and conversation, Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Dilanian, the reporter bylined on that reporting. The Rev Al and Tim are still here. Ken, this is remarkable. Tell us what we know about the whistleblower account.
Well, Nicole, it's interesting. My understanding and our reporting is that this kind of thing has happened a lot, actually, at the Justice Department during the Trump administration. In this case, we're getting a glimpse of the mechanics of it. You had a U.S. Attorney's Office in Alabama filled with career prosecutors and FBI agents. They've been investigating this case for some time. Apparently, there were concerns about whether to move forward with it for obvious reasons. Many independent legal experts have looked at this case and said it's not going to pass muster, in part because the Southern Poverty Law Center for years has worked with the FBI and the Justice Department and has passed on information gleaned from these informants about these hate groups. And so there were concerns within the office. And what happened was, according to this whistleblower account, a man named Akash Singh, who's an Associate Attorney General, who is known inside the Justice Department as Todd Blanche's enforcer, essentially, called up folks at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Middle District of Alabama and pressured them to move forward, again, according to this whistleblower account. And Singh has done this a lot, according to our reporting and the reporting of others. There's a really interesting profile of him in Bloomberg News, where he is openly known as the enforcer. He's the if you're Todd Blanche or Pam Bondi before him, and you're at Main Justice, and you want U.S. attorneys' offices to do the bidding of Donald Trump, you need people to make that happen. There's a mechanics process to all this, and Akash Singh is one of those people that is not a household name, a young former prosecutor and former Republican Senate staffer who is making this happen, who is making pulling the levers of power, putting pressure on these U.S. attorneys' offices to do what Donald Trump wants. And in this case, according to the whistleblower account, he did that with the Middle District of Alabama. And, you have a U.S. attorney there who's an acting U.S. attorney who's not Senate confirmed. And so that gives Main Justice greater leverage over that. And we've seen time and again that people who resist these kinds of directives from Main Justice, they are pushed out of the way or fired. And so, again, this is happening time and again. And in this case, we got a glimpse of it through a whistleblower account sent to Congress, Nicole.
Ken Dilanian, what is the state of whistleblower protections right now in the second Trump term?
Well, it's interesting, Jared Wise, who is a former J6 defendant and who actually worked for a time at the FBI under the Trump administration, is no longer there. He posted on X above of my post of my story that there should be a leak investigation into this whistleblower. And that seemed to have gotten a lot of support within MAGA world. I don't think the protections for whistleblowers are very strong right now. People are taking a lot of risk by doing this. And there are a lot of, from our understanding, there are many leaks investigations and insider threat investigations, they call them, within the FBI, when there are stories that the Justice Department and the FBI don't like. Now, thankfully, we all have encryption. We have methods that we use to communicate with sources, and so does Congress, to try to avoid the prying eyes of people who want to expose our sources. But it's a disquieting time to do this kind of work on our end, and it's a very perilous time for people who want to blow the whistle on what they see as wrongdoing inside the Justice Department.
Ken Delaney, are you able to connect the dots to Todd Blanche's very public campaign to be made the permanent attorney general and these Russia indictments?
Oh, 100%. His aides are not even really making a secret of this. I mean, they're boasting about it, that Todd Blanche has more effectively juiced these cases that Donald Trump wants, whether it's this one or whether it's the Comey indictment or, there's an investigation of Cassidy Hutchinson that we're still waiting to see what's happening with that. Investigation of John Brennan. Todd Blanche has been, he brought in Joe DeGeneva to help breathe new life into that grand conspiracy investigation that's being run down in South Florida, the premise of which is so fantastical. When you say it, it just sounds bananas, that the idea that FBI agents and Justice Department officials going back to the Mueller investigation have been conspiring to break the law to deprive Donald Trump of his civil rights by investigating him and framing him, in this view, on all these various investigations and charges. And it's all knitted together in a grand conspiracy. That's the premise. They have actual FBI agents and career prosecutors working on this investigation, and Todd Blanche is trying to push it forward because he knows that's what Donald Trump wants. He's been very intentional about that. It's part of an audition to become the permanent attorney general. But the thing about Todd Blanche's situation is, under the Vacancies Act, because he was the first assistant and he's been previously Senate confirmed, he can stay in the acting role for 210 days. And he can stay as long as his nomination, if Donald Trump nominates him, he can stay as long as that nomination is pending before the Senate. So he may be the acting attorney general for some time, Nicole.